Good morning or good afternoon, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Rachel Starbuck from the Business Review, and I will be your host. It is our pleasure to have OSTHUS with us today, who will be discussing seamless innovation by improved laboratory informatics. Today's guest speakers are Dr. Natasha Castro, who is a Senior Business Consultant, and Friedrich Hübner, who is a Business Development Manager. I'd like to welcome you to our new webinar platform. You will notice that this webinar is browser-based, so if you disconnect, please click on the link that you received via email to rejoin. You may move and resize the windows on your screen to customize your view. All of the icons along the bottom of your screen are the interactive widgets that we have on offer today, so please interact with them all throughout the session. In order to ask questions, you can send them in via the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen, or please use the top left-hand box. We will allocate around 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the session to address any questions or thoughts that you may have. Please use the Help widget if you experience any technical difficulties or require any more assistance. So without further ado, please allow me to welcome Friedrich.
Hello to everybody. My name is Friedrich Hübner. I'm working as Business Development Manager since a few years for OSTHUS now. I will do the introductory part of our session, and Natasha will guide us through the main part. Improved laboratory informatics. What does this mean? In our terms, it's about making data electronic, avoiding duplicate data entry, support the digital birth of data, remove manual operations from the scientist's work, and thereby make data referenceable and searchable. All, of course, is meant to improve the overall workflow efficiency. Let's have a look at our today's agenda. I will briefly talk about OSTHUS and introduce OSTHUS for those that not have heard about us. Then we will have a look into the modern challenges of lab automation, and Natasha will take on the reference architecture and identify possible shortcomings in the IT. And we will have a look to current standards and do a summary before we then end up with a question and answer session. So I start with a short introduction to OSTHUS. OSTHUS was founded in 1996 with OSTHUS GmbH in Germany. In 2013, we started OSTHUS Incorporated in the US, and in 2015, we opened a new site in China. By now, we are about 65 R&D domain experts. Our implementation teams bring together both a scientific background in chemistry, biology, or physics, cheminformatics or bioinformatics, and, of course, general IT background. This is definitely one of our strengths, combining science and scientific background with IT background. In short terms, we transform the very complex R&D environment into manageable units, systems and projects to achieve better processes at our customers and support better decision making. How do we achieve this? Now, we have three segments in our business. The first is the consultancy, where we are engaged in project scoping, requirement gathering, decision support about possible solutions and possible alternatives. The second segment is solutions. This is about building solutions either from standard industry components and standard applications from vendors, or create very new custom solutions. Of course, we support the projects that we have done with domain-specific managed services that you see here on the right side. To nearly every project, we add some innovation. We built the first R&D search engine. We have done framework development, which was new at the time when we really started with it. And we are now engaged in the Electro project, which is also exploring new space in lab automation. For our customers, we work globally from Europe, the US, and China. Most of our customers are big pharma or biotech companies. One needs, of course, special mentioning the Allotrope Foundation. Allotrope is an industry consortia driving the standardization of analytical data and integration with LIMS and ELN vendors. Another thing we should briefly talk about is the partner portfolio of OSTHUS. We're working with technology partners like Oracle, Microsoft, and the major application partners like IDBS, BioVia, Documentum, Thermo Fisher, Dotmatics, just to mention a few of them, but also with a smaller set of companies if there is need in individual projects. We are independent from the vendors in the sense that we are open to integrate any third-party product when there is a need for. During our projects, we focus on the value that can be derived from the functionality. Not every nice item which may be expensive to build is worthwhile to have. It is because its value to the overall aim of the and goal of the project is only marginal. We support our customers in doing these sensible trade-offs. During our work, we have developed successful concepts and best practices that we redeploy and improve over time. Rather often, this gives projects a head-on start, and customers significantly benefit from it. Our projects are finished when we have a positive feedback from the customers. Sometimes this may need to go an extra mile on our side. So far for our short introduction about OSTHUS. I will now have a look into the present challenges in lab automation. We have gathered here some quotes from recent publications. I don't want to go through them in detail, but the bottom line is the industry is rapidly changing. Cost of developing new medicine is rising, and the age of blockbusters is definitely over. To reduce cost and speed up innovation, the industry is focusing more and more on externalization. The business model of pharma is changing from a monolithic organization performing everything in-house to a networked model using the knowledge of academia, specialized companies, and internal research. But this does not come with ease. Major driving forces in the pharma and chemical world, as we see, are, of course, the increased externalization. There is also a push for a strategic speed in the organization by, for example, building smaller business units or even company splits. And there is a move towards a holistic lab informatics solution. This, as an example, may be large data warehousing or initiatives in the big data field. Many of the big companies have initiated and started initiatives in that area already. As research becomes more externalized and more dispersed over sites, it becomes also more difficult to gather all information required for quick decision making. There are many data sources, each with their own data standards, data quality, and data formats and taxonomies. As a consequence, scientists lose time on gathering all required information or on manual integration of all these data sources. The IT teams are facing a huge integration effort of all these systems with increased maintenance. What could be a possible solution to this situation? One platform in the research branch of a company, which is necessary and a goal in itself, is good as it offers a lot of benefits. But there remains some other things that need to be solved. For data standards to interchange data between companies and research partners, and to establish end-to-end processes from data capture through to analysis and data mining. So not every company is willing to use the same vendor for its platform. The data standard will have to be vendor agnostic and neutral to facilitate communication between different companies. We will show you a typical example of an integration scenario with some common issues encountered there. Most companies strive for information systems integrated with lab equipment and instruments. Data is normally automatically captured and transferred from the data acquisition instrumentation. There may be systems where this data is gathered and the data is imported into these systems. May they be either ELN, LIMS, LES, or SDMS systems. Then later on, the system is exported again from there onto systems used for data analytics, data marts, data mining, predictive modeling, simulation. But this does not go easily. There are problems around doing so. There are always manual transcriptions. Sometimes there is missing context. There is a need to transfer the methods between the collaboration partners and the internal systems because they are running on different methods, perhaps. And there's a lot of manual effort to get the data out again with reformatting, adding up additional data, make the data complete. And, of course, there is need for data cleaning and build some kind of controlled vocabularies. In fact, the amount of IT support for scripting to do all these work is getting bigger and bigger again. So this is the rough description of the environment we are in. Before we go over to see what could be done about this situation, we started, like you, to answer two questions.
Thank you.
So, Rachel, could you take over?
Thank you very much, Friedrich. So, have you done an integration project before, and your answers are from yes or no? So, if everyone could please select the correct answer applicable to you, and then click Submit. Okay, then. So, if we take a look at the results. Wow, so it's 50-50. Are these interesting results for you, Friedrich?
Well, yes. The 60% are definitely heading for some challenges, and maybe we may be of help in this or the other area. And for the others, for the 40%, we definitely would like to know in the question and answer session what they possibly would have done different from their experience. And this would give us interesting questions, I think.
Okay, so let's move on to the next poll question. So, what, in your opinion, are the biggest risks for an integration project? And your answers are from technological challenges, data issues like standardization and quality, lack of expertise, or change of management. So if you could please select the relevant answer to you and click Submit. I will just give you a couple of seconds to do so. So just give you a couple more seconds on the poll question before we move on to the results. Okay, then. So are these interesting results for you?
Yeah, I'll take over now. This is Natasha speaking. Yeah, I see that most people see data issues and standardization and quality as one of the bigger problems there. So within this webinar, we will talk a bit about standardization and how to improve your data quality. Lack of expertise and change management, also very important things to take into account when you do integration projects. So hopefully in the rest of the webinar we can answer some of your questions, and otherwise please feel free to contact us. So, what risk do we normally see, or what challenges do we normally see? Well, one is, which is already coming from the poll, one is very obvious, and that's the data challenge. Whenever you are combining data from different sources, you will have to deal with different data types, data formats, and different levels of data quality. And even though people are aware of it, it's still an area which many people underestimate when they are planning these types of projects. You may need to normalize, transform, curate, or enrich your data to ensure that you reach the desired quality level of the integrated data. And even though it may surprise you, we still occasionally come across people who want the integrated data to answer some questions which it can't because the information hasn't been captured in the source systems. So that's in the data. We also, of course, have a technical challenge. And that technical challenge is often in how do I combine the data? How do I map these data models? Can I even extract the data from the source systems in a way that I need them? And what type of integrated solution am I looking for? Am I going for a classical data warehouse, or am I going for more flexible data marts? And one of the very important questions you have to ask up front is, what do you want your integrated data to answer? For example, if you just want to find your data, it may be more beneficial to have a Google-like search supported by Semantics. Well, if you want to do severe data analytics, you may actually have to pull all the data from your source systems and transform them into a way that you can do analytics on it. So these are two of the very obvious challenges. The other two which I want to highlight is that it's always very difficult to keep these type of projects within time and within budget. And why is that so difficult? Mostly because at the beginning of these projects, most people don't have an idea about the quality of the data in their systems. Integration projects put a magnifying glass on your source systems, and even minor data issues like missing data or conflicting data in sources can cause a big delay or have a huge effect on your costs. So what we always advise our customers is that before they start a data integration project, please have a good look at the quality of your source systems, your data quality, so that you can make a realistic estimate of the cost and time. And the final risk, which also came out from the poll question, is actually concerning people. And that's a two aspects. We have change management. Change management is very important in data integration projects. There's always a risk that this happens behind the scenes without, at the IT departments, without the scientists and the business being involved. And then at the end, you have this beautiful solution, but nobody knows it or nobody understands how to work with it. So one of our tips is actually bring people in very quickly, bring your business people in, let them join you in the project so that they can assist you and that they can understand what you want to achieve. The other one is the expertise question. Of course, you need tech-savvy people. Sometimes you have them in-house, but you can also get them from externals, or just find help for that. The most important people you need for these projects are actually the people who understand your data and have a knowledge of IT. And these people are rare. If you have them in your company, be very happy, but then you still have to get them on your project, which is a challenge in itself. So there are many aspects which make data integration projects challenging and risky. So how can you limit the risks? In the rest of the webinar, I will hopefully give you a couple of tips how you can limit these risks. One of the first things I want to talk to you about is reference architectures. So reference architectures. What are they? It's one of the tools that we use within our company. And what do reference architectures do? They help you find gaps between your current IT setup and your future IT setup. They allow you to modularize your IT and to prepare yourself for future technology change. They also allow you to minimize the number of interfaces by standardization. And if you adopt a reference architecture within your organization, which I can highly recommend, it accelerates the delivery of these type of difficult projects. So how can they look? I'm just going to present you with a very high-level, simple reflection of a reference architecture showing the combination of laboratory workflow and the data analytics. So first of all, as Friedrich already said in the introduction, most of the time the data is generated within labs, on instruments, or at partners and CROs. So the data is generated there and it's fed into both your lab workflow, which is your ELN and your LIMSys and your LESSys, but it also generates a lot of files. And these files need to be stored somewhere. And in general, with all the people we have seen before, they go to a data archive, to a scientific data management system, or into a documentation management system. Information from both these areas feeds into your data analytics. If you want to do a good data analytics like data mining or data modeling, you will need information both from those files you store and also from your lab workflow. And the glue that holds everything together is actually the master data. Master data helps you to combine this. Master data is also an interesting challenge because in a lot of the companies we see, it's not very mature. And what do I mean with that? I'm not saying that people don't have master data. People have a lot of master data, but it's dispersed and every single system has their own. And often this master data is not harmonized, which in the end can cause problems when you want to combine data. It's something which we see in a lot of companies, but what we also have noticed lately is that a lot of companies are putting a lot of effort into harmonization of their master data. So let's go a bit more into detail. As I said, I would like to look at the two worlds of the lab workflow and the data analytics workflow. How do they meet? Well, in the lab workflow, that's why the data is generated. You make an experiment, you write up a report, or you write up a summary. Then you have your data analytics, which needs that information to set their data to knowledge. How do they connect? To know that, you need to know where your data is. To make correct decisions, you need to know that the data is there, that it's of high quality, otherwise you cannot make your correct decision. So it's not always easy to combine these workflows and to find the data for your decision. And why not? I think, as Friedrich also mentioned in the introduction, the biggest one is that a lot of people have to deal with a patchwork of different softwares. Your data may be scattered all over the place. It may be in different data capture systems. It may be in your ELN or in your LIMSys. It may be on the share. It may be on files and maybe in PDF reports. And even if you have the data captured electronically, it's really hard to combine them, specifically because there's a lot of different data formats. If you want to pull the data together, for example, if you want to combine two systems, it's very hard often to do that because there are no standard software interfaces. So often you have to build dedicated interfaces per application. But one of the most important things which hinders you in finding and understanding and interpreting your data is the lack of metadata, consistent metadata. What is the context around your data? Who did it? Where was it done? And what does it mean? So how can we solve these issues? One way to solve it, and a very good one, is to use open document standards. So it's easy to get data from one system to the other. Another way is using reusable software components and standardized APIs so that you don't have to build these special connectors anymore and you can easily plug in new systems. And as you hear me talking throughout this webinar a lot about metadata and the language we speak, it's most important that you have your metadata in a good and clean way. It has to be consistent, and you can either do that through a metadata repository or you can start by introducing master data management. So a final, more detailed look on where these standards fit into the workflow. Standardized metadata and taxonomies will allow you to easily exchange the data between systems, as I've already said. It will also ensure that the interpretation of the data is correct. For example, if your registration system, your ELN, and your data analytics systems are all using the same metadata, it makes it much easier to answer the question you want to ask. It also allows you, like Friedrich already said in the introduction, to exchange easier the information between your CROs and your partners. If you have standardized APIs, it's easier to exchange files between different systems, and you can plug in a new data capture or a new data analytics systems without a problem. Standardized data formats allow you to easily exchange the files between the systems without the need of manual transcription or reformatting. And that's particularly handy if you get a big report from your CRO and you don't want to type that over. So standardization overall makes your data analytics easier as your data is cleaner, of higher quality, and more standardized. So this actually brings me to the second part of our presentation, which is I will want to delve in a bit more deeply into the standardization. So in our normal daily lives, standardization is everywhere. I think most of us don't even know it. I can send you a picture from my smartphone, and you can open it. You can laugh at it. I can send you my music, and we can share your favorite music, even if I have an iPhone and you have a Samsung. So if we use these standards all through our daily life, why don't we use them in our laboratories? Is that because there's so many standards in the labs? We have, of course, our regulatory standards, which we have when we have to submit something to the regulatory bodies. Or do we have our own company standards? Do we maybe have too many standards? Or do we actually have too little standards? I think it doesn't matter what, but right now is the lack of standardization is hindering our workflow. So here you see a problem which almost everybody in the audience who has ever been in a laboratory can relate to and can recognize. Experiments, when we do them, we use all types of instruments to gather our data, and all these instruments usually come with their own data format. If I want to take such an instrument file and put it into another application, if I'm lucky, I can read it in. If I'm unlucky, I have to convert it or I have to transcribe it. This results in errors. This can, especially when you have to do manual transcription. Another problem is often that the associated metadata we need to get the correct context of our data is often not consistent, especially not when these are manually entered. And the biggest problem is actually, as Friedrich already said, the information is usually spread over multiple sources. So, as Friedrich said in the introduction, we are working very closely with the Allotrope Foundation, and this is a slide on which I want to talk to you about this foundation. What is Allotrope exactly? Allotrope is a unique collaboration of analytical chemistry and computer software professionals, and they are working on the strategic development of long-term sustainable lab environments. Okay, that's a mouthful, but what are they doing? They are building a framework that enables the use of the standards and the metadata in software development. So in the end, this will allow easy exchange of data between different applications and will ensure that the language is consistent, reducing the need for the manual transcription and allowing for a seamless integration of your instruments in the data. I think it's very important to say that Allotrope is not building a new application. No, they are building a framework which you and also the vendors of the instruments can use to help this data integration. So if you're not familiar with them, I would like to invite you to look at their website or contact us, and we will be more than willing to give you the information. Especially when you are not in the analytical space, we have a lot of experience in applying the same principles. So if you would need some help in standardization, please give us a ring. You find the contact details in the widget. So Throughout the webinar, you've heard me say multiple times that language is very important. Speaking the same language is essential when we're doing integration projects. We need to understand the data coming from the different systems. And one of the struggles is, what does the data actually mean? So there are several options which can happen. For example, you can have multiple systems referring to the same thing, but using different terms, as the creatinine example on your screen. Another thing which also happens is that systems refer to different things, but use the same terms. This often happens when you're dealing with abbreviations and the context is different. A typical example of this is TNF, the abbreviation TNF. That can be either mean the cytokine, tumor necrosis factor alpha, or maybe it could be referring to a project which is looking into TNF, or maybe TNF is the biological target of a certain experiment. As you can see, context is everything. So one way to standardize this is by using semantic tools. There are many open taxonomies, classification systems, and ontologies that can assist you in the classification of your company terms. So in the next few slides, I want to have a quick look at how semantics can assist you in standardization of your vocabulary. So if I take that creatinine example on my previous slide and I go to CHEBI, and CHEBI is the chemical entity of biological interest dictionary, which is freely available on the internet, by the way, what do I get? First of all, CHEBI gives us a unique resource identifier, which exists from a namespace and an identifier for creatinine. And to that, they add all the synonyms, which they know of creatinine. So in a way, integrating all that information into this single unique resource identifier, or URI. To that, CHEBI also adds additional information, like creatinine's definition, its formula, the SMILES, the UPEC name, literature. There's a lot of information on this specific chemical entity. And this information is freely available, and you can use it as well in your own company. You can either link out to CHEBI to get this information, or you can actually bring CHEBI into your company and use it in mapping of your terms. CHEBI not only gives us all this information on different names and synonyms, it also gives us taxonomies and ontologies. And taxonomy and ontologies are higher level of organization of your data, and it gives you relationships between the terms. So on your screen right now, you see a hierarchy for creatinine, which shows that creatinine is a lactam, and which is a cyclic amide. This information can actually help you look at your data in a different way and use it to investigate your data from different perspectives. Ontologies define further relationships between entities. For example, the example here, again, creatinine. Well, creatinine is also a metabolite. It has a functional parent and it has a role. And as I said, taxonomies and ontologies can help you find connections in your data which you didn't realize before. For example, you can access the information from different viewpoints. You can query on diagnostic agents or on metabolites and get information on creatinine. Or if your system may not have stored that creatinine is a metabolite of Homo sapiens, you can now query on metabolites by using these ontologies. So in a way, using ontologies and taxonomies helps you to enrich your data with information you may not have had in your source systems, but allows you to look at it from different perspectives, and hopefully gives you insights which you didn't see before. So what are the general advantages of semantics? It's a standardized reference terminology which helps us to understand a domain. So I speak the same language as somebody from outside of my company because we understand the domain and we use the same terms. The RDF and Sparkle, they're accepted standards. And what's also very nice is that there are many open taxonomies, classification systems, and ontologies out there which you can already use. So the example which I showed you is from Chebi. There are many more out there. And as I said, you can use them to map your own terms. You can map to any of the synonyms. Just make sure that the mapping is correct. Sometimes you can automate it, but most of the time you will need somebody to have a look at it and ensure the mapping. But in the end, this can give you insights into your data which you did not have before. So this also brings me to the summary of our webinar. So what overall are the benefits of integration and standardization? First and foremost, of course, integration of different data sources allows you to access data in an easy and convenient way, allowing you to find your data more quickly. Second, data standardization allows you to improve the quality level of your data. If you use the external taxonomies and ontologies, you may actually also gain extra insights into your data which you hadn't seen before. Using the open document standards and standardized metadata makes it easier to gather information together from different systems and allows you to more easily exchange data between your partners and CROs, making it easy to exchange information. That's because everybody adheres to the same language and keeps the same standard. It also reduces the amount of manual work and allows for seamless collaboration. Overall, your analytic capabilities will be improved. First of all, it's quite obvious. You can access your data. Second of all, the quality of your data is higher. And third, standardization again allows you to combine internal information with external information in a more convenient and easy way. So like Friedrich already said in the beginning, integration and standardization, why do we do it? We do it to improve the overall efficiency of your organization. For example, because scientists get easier access to the data, they no longer have to look hours and hours for their information. They need to make their decision, and in the end, it will make your life easier, and you get to faster and better decisions on time. So the main message which we want to give you with this webinar is that data integration projects become easier and faster if you use standardization. So I want to invite you to have a look at some of the alliances and foundations who are currently working on standardization within our industry. I've already mentioned Allotrope, but in this context, I also want to mention the Pistoia Alliance, which is already also doing a lot of work on standardization. If you don't know them, have a look at what they're doing, or if you want more information, you can always contact us. So this is all that we wanted to share, Friedrich and myself, with you today. But before we take your questions, I would like to invite you to join our next webinar, which will take place in October, and not on October 15, but on October 21st. And it will focus on how semantic technologies can assist you in data integration. So we will delve more deeply into the second part of our webinar, which we presented to you today. So I think Friedrich and me are now ready to take your questions. So I'll hand back to Rachel for the Q&A session.
Thank you very much, Natasha. So also thanks to everyone who has already sent their questions in. Please continue to send in your questions via the Q&A widget at the bottom of your screen or using the top left-hand box. We will try and get through as many of the questions as possible. However, if we do not have time to answer them all in this webinar, then Natasha and Friedrich will get back to you at a later date. So for your first question, how often do you see companies which are suffering efficiency loss through lack of information access?
Friedrich, would you like to take that one, or shall I start?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Start, please.
Okay. It's an interesting question, Rachel, because we actually see that quite often. Even though a lot of people over the years have invested a lot of time to already build integrated solutions, especially for structured data, Most companies have solutions in place. We still see people losing time because they're trying to find their data, especially when they want to connect the structured data with unstructured data. And as more and more information comes also from the public domain, it becomes harder to combine these data. You see more collaboration. Friedrich, would you like to comment on that?
So as the level of externalization goes up, there is a stronger need to exchange data too. And the areas are still a bit immature. People make it work with a lot of effort. But we see that standardization in that area could also be used to the benefit of everybody, the CROs and the companies alike.
Okay then, so for your second question, what in your opinion are the biggest challenges in integration projects and how should these be solved?
Okay, well I think which already became clear from the part of the webinar which I gave, one of the biggest challenges is data. Your data quality level and also the state of your master data. It all boils down again, are we speaking the same language? Like I said, integration projects, they put a magnifying glass on the data of your source system, and it's very hard to estimate upfront. So in my opinion, it's one of the biggest challenges, and it's something which is heavily overlooked. In my personal experience, I've had it happen that we thought we were perfectly ready with one of the data warehouse in one of my previous companies, and then when we had a critical look at the data, we realized that we needed to do some data cleansing and some data curation. But that's just the data part. I think there's also a lot of challenges in the IT, isn't there, Friedrich?
Yes, but the IT is a bit better prepared. There are a lot of tools out there that will help to do integration coming from the database area. If it's more the formatted things, where things are getting more complicated is the unstructured data, where you have to do text analysis, text mining, and that kind of stuff to bring the data in to some comparable way. But there are things to ease the way, and we may be of help in selecting the right tools in that area.
I hope that answers the question to the audience.
Thank you very much. And how many time and effort is lost on average gathering data together?
I think that's a very hard question to answer. In our experience, it depends heavily on the maturity level of the IT systems within a company, how much time is spent on searching. We've actually heard anything from we can find it easily to up to 20 to 40% of our time is lost gathering and finding the data. And then when we found it, then the data actually sometimes needs to be converted, reformatted. Sometimes context is missing, so it needs to be enriched. I think, like I said, there's a big range there. It definitely depends also on the question you want to ask. Some questions are much harder to answer. Would you like to add something?
Well, there's a lot of time that people do spend on the search area in unproductive way and unproductive work hours, and you may eliminate that and improve the overall efficiency. And that's, as has been said, somewhere in the range of 20+% that may be achieved and had been seen in organizations using a fully electronic way of working instead of doing a lot of manual work.
Thank you very much. And how many instrument and database solution providers are implementing open formats?
Well, in the Allotrope Foundation, there are currently, I think, about 10 vendors. I have not a complete list here on my mind, but you may go to the Allotrope webpage And there are vendors like BioV or like IDBS or like Thermo Fisher that have already adopted this standard, and there are other more in that area. And please have a look on the allotrope. There is the very latest update.
Thank you very much. And how do you compare with cloud solutions?
Well, the difference in the integration is not that big because you have to solve it anyway. Even if you host an integrated solution on your own premises or on the cloud adds a certain level of expertise that's needed on top of it to make things secure, and it adds on probably a discussion about data privacy and regulations that you have to obey in your home country. But the basic technical and project is to be done in pretty much the same way.
Thank you. And which benefits do you see from the investment in data integration?
What's stated in the webinar, a big benefit can be seen in the easy access that people do get for their data, and the speed that is gathered in the decision making. The other thing is that on the long term, there is a reduction of the technical issues because you have settled on a certain infrastructure for the integration, and you don't have to invent the integration part over and over again by adding in another application or another data set. And it's the modularity that helps the companies long term with changes in applications because there are separate components and the interfaces and APIs are well defined. So the focus shifts away from the pure technology onto the data, and there is more time spent in analyzing and acting on the data, which is good for the overall scientific process.
Thank you. And what is absolutely essential for a data integration project to succeed?
Well, I think we already highlighted that in the webinar. Of course, you need very good technical expertise and business expertise, but it's also essential to have management support. This has to do closely with change management. And as I said already, change management is often underestimated in these kinds of projects. So it's really important that when you start such a project, that you work with multidisciplinary teams, including your IT, your business people, and not only the business people who will benefit from the end solutions, or your data mining experts or your analytics experts, but also the people who work in data capture, the people who work in the source systems. You need to include these as well. And if you ignore that, it can definitely have a negative impact, especially on the acceptance of the integrated solution. One thing which we also always recommend is that you build a kind of governance board, especially on IT and data, so that as soon as you have your integrated solution in place, that you ensure that the quality of such a solution stays very high. And you can do that by bringing such a board into play, in which usually there are some business people, some IT people together, and they make decisions on what can go into the new system and what not.
Thank you very much. And what in your opinion, are the future trends?
Well, there is a certain need in the future to combine structured and unstructured information. This area has not been solved completely to the satisfaction of everybody. And with the invention of ELNs, there is a lot of more of information now captured, and it's about now to unlock this data and unstructured data that is kept there to make it available for advanced analytics. Another way or another trend we see is how to cope with personalized data in research, and because of the associated privacy challenges that are there. Another trend is using much bigger data volumes that have been used in the past, because there is more data generated automatically on the lab, more data generated by NGS and the omics, and you have to deal with that data. So there is a lot of new tools, projects around that area. And also to expect, I would say, there is a more regulation that is coming down to the pharmaceutical companies. For example, with IDMP, now the companies are urged to submit much more data than they had to do before, and the data systems underneath have to be enabled to give this data away to authorities.
So many trends coming,
yeah.
Many interesting challenges coming to the industry.
Each topic mentioned would be worth another webinar in its own.
Yes.
Okay, so that is actually all we have time for in today's session. So that just leaves me to thank Natasha and Friedrich for what was a great presentation, and thanks to OSTHUS for sponsoring this session. To the attendees, you will receive an email shortly telling you how you can access the on-demand version of this webinar, or you can access this through our website, which is www.business-review-webinars.com. We look forward to sharing further webinars with you, so please do keep an eye out on the website just mentioned, and follow us on Twitter @BRWebinars for daily updates, and join our LinkedIn group, Business Review Webinars. So thank you once again, and I hope you all have a nice day.